Welcome to 5 and 5 from One Stop Co-op Shop, where I review 5 key design decisions in a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today we're looking at an older game with some new things on the horizon, Time Stories from Space Cowboys. Additionally, if you hang out at the end of the video, I'll have a quick review of Madam, the final expansion in the cycle. With that out of the way, let's look at 5 things about Time Stories. We begin with a bit of a mix, and that's the core elements of the game, the action system and the dice-based resolution. On the positive end, resolving actions in the game, either moving or rolling some dice for a test, are very streamlined, are simultaneous, having no downtime, and go really quickly and smoothly. On the negative side, though, it can be a little difficult sometimes to track who's taken their action, especially because characters can see a card for a location, but one that has no test required, move to a new location and look at another card, which kind of muddies the entire thing. The dice system is also streamlined, and the idea of having different shields on the enemies and tests that require different ways to complete them is really fun and varied. But the negative to the dice is that this is a very tight mystery game where you have to really carefully make your choices each turn, and having an entire run of the time loop ruined because of a few bad dice rolls isn't always much fun. Going into a full-on pro, out of all the mystery games I've played, and that's a lot, this is the one that is by far the most cooperative. Because each player looks at their own card at their own location and then decides how to share that information with the other players without reading it word for word, you get a sort of hidden information element and forced cooperation and communication that makes this a very team-driven experience that I can't really imagine playing solo. Now, the only slight worry here is that if somebody really doesn't get a card or just reads it incorrectly and the rest of the team never looks at it, you could get some misinformation that could lead you down some really bad rabbit holes, so just be cautious about that. Third, we have another big pro related to the last one, and that's how the cards are laid out in a tableau at each location. First of all, artistically and thematically, it's a beautiful way to represent the locations you're investigating and to give players information about what they can do. On that point, I love that each card indicates what kind of thing might be happening there, and thus which types of characters might be better suited to it. This card might look like you're going to fight there, another one might look like you're going to talk to someone. So it organically gives the players information and makes the game flow smoothly, but also giving you a tactical feel to everything. It's such a clever piece of design and graphic organizing, makes the game so easy to get into and so beautiful to look at, and I really love it. Unfortunately, we go from 2 pros into a mix, and that's how the time units are used to track your progress in the game and end one of your loops, forcing you to restart from the beginning. Now, this one is going to be mostly negative depending on which expansion you're playing for the game. In some of the expansions, this feels completely arbitrary. There's no reason given for why you have to go back besides that your time technology sends you there. And when you have a really good loop going, you're figuring things out, it feels frustrating to be arbitrarily pulled back and just have to go to the same locations and repeat stuff again. Now, on the positive end, some of the expansions, especially some of the later ones, did use this in an effective way. Without giving spoilers, some of them actually had a thematic reason for why you had to go back at the end of time, like something would happen that would make you no longer able to continue the investigation. So in those games, I would say the time units are a huge plus, but in the rest of them, they just kind of feel like a frustrating element. So it's really going to be a mixed thing depending on which version of the game you're playing. Now, sadly, we are going to end on a pretty big negative, and that's how repetitive the game gets at the end, and anticlimactic in many cases. So the game likes to pretend that there's a clock running down, and that if you don't succeed in the mystery soon enough, that you're going to get, fired from your job. But at least in all the ones I've played, which is more than half of them, it's just a false thing, and you get as much time as you need at the end once you reach that point. And once you get there, a lot of the mysteries devolve to where you know a lot of the elements, but you have to repeat things to access other things to get to something else. Now, if you've seen a movie like Groundhog Day, this fits thematically because Bill Murray's character had to repeat sort of his best day over and over again, getting little tweaks right until he had the perfect day planned. But the thing is, in the movie, we didn't have to watch him repeat all those steps every single time. It would just use the magic of editing to move past all of that. But in Time Stories, unless you cheat and just say, hey, we're not doing all of that, we're just going to start over here with all the things we need, it can get really repetitive and really boring. Overall, although I love the concept of Time Stories and some expansions really did hit me in a good place, I would say it's not going to be great for everyone and is not one of my favorite mystery games. While the time looping sounds like a good concept, it's most often used in a frustrating way. Combine this with the fact that the mysteries tend to take us 3 or 4 or even 5 hours to solve, which sounds great because it's a lot of gameplay since you're getting basically a one-off experience, but so much of that is just repetition at the end that it doesn't really feel fulfilling. It feels like a 2-hour game that gets stretched to 3 or 4 hours. Now that being said, the mysteries can be engrossing. It's really cool to see how the expansions were designed differently, and it can give you a very new play every time you look at it. So in the end, I'm not quite sure who I should recommend this game for and against. The one thing I will say is, if you're not planning to go all in and spend a lot of money to get all the expansions, or at least play many of them, I don't think it's worth getting the base game, because the price isn't really there unless you're going to add more components onto it. It's not enough just for the one-off experience you get in the core. Alright, with the full review out of the way, I wanted to talk about Madam, the final expansion in the first cycle of Time Stories. I'll start by saying this expansion is overall great. It's probably my favorite one out of all the purchasable expansions, and it's right up there with Asylum, the core game scenario, which has been my favorite through all my previous plays. Let's talk about some of the reasons why. There'll be minor spoilers as to gameplay elements. I'm not going to give away anything major, so it shouldn't mess with you playing the game, but if you want to go in completely fresh, you might want to stop the video here. So first of all, something I really enjoyed is that the jumps here, the loops, are very short, like only 5 or 6 or 7 time units to investigate as much as you can. This, in a way, fixes my frustration with going through loops over and over, because you really just have enough time to investigate like one location at a time, and it feels very nicely segmented and kind of like you get a good amount of stuff done each time you jump in. Also, to not spoil too much, this one introduces the ability of finding new receptacles, the characters you play, as you go through, and actually switching characters from jump to jump. This can allow you to solve puzzles where you unlock certain options based on who your character is, and I found this incredibly engrossing and exciting, and really made this feel like more of an organic world than any of the other ones I had played. On the negative side, I did find the objective we were trying to accomplish to be a little confusing. We did eventually solve it, but it was a bit through trial and error more than I would like. Also, the theme of this one was fine. It's during the rule of Louis XIV in France, but I certainly didn't find it as exciting as some of the other themes. But taking all that big picture stuff away, I do think this is the best expansion for my money that the entire first cycle contains. So it's a little weird, but if you really want the best play experience, I would say get the core and Madam, and then you can add on any other purchases you want. But those are my 2 favorites by far. Good gaming, everyone, and I'll see you at the next stop.